And oh, okay. Glad you guys are here. And tonight we're going to have some Anishinnaabe-based Ojibwe storytelling. And because Kurt last week asked me to do a presentation on this, which I love. I love doing that, especially the the Ojibwe storytelling. There's legends. At Soul Canon, we call those legends. The northern Ojibways, we have Wisakechak, and his stories. I've told you guys this before. And down south here, you have Nanabush, or some people call them Nanabojo. And then way down in the East Coast, the Micmacs and East Coast Anishinaabe over there, they have Gloskamp. And these legends, stories are about when we were kids. That's what our parents told us, especially in the wintertime. And when we ask a question just before we go to bed, as kids, you hear the trees crack, and you could hear those trees crack, especially when you're sleeping in a tent in the middle of the wilderness way outside, and you just have those miners' canvas tents, and you could hear the trees crack, and just right outside. And then as kids we get really scared, and we ask when any, what is that? And then our mom and dad would say, "Oh, it's Chikabis, Chikabis, the hunter. He missed something. He hit a tree." Or at night, a long time ago, the ice would crack, make noises, and of course, mom and dad would say, "Oh, it's just Chikabis hunting under the ice, chasing fish or something." So that's what these stories are about. And then a long time ago, there would have been stories of battles, stories of great warriors, the Anishinaabe warrior society, and battles that they had that they were involved with, and who were the great warriors. And in our stories, there's a men's warrior society, but there was also the Ikwe warrior society, the females, the woman warrior society. That was not well known, especially in our education system, that these stories are not told anymore. And I know for a fact that there would be the Anishinaabe that still follow, the traditional Anishinaabe lifestyle, the culture, the language, and there are people out there that know all this stuff, and it's all in the language. And that I worked with this one person one time, And he told me, he says, I know all my relations right to War of 1812, he says. And it was because he was told orally. And he follows, this guy follows the traditional Anishinaabe knowledge system. And he makes sure that all his little nephews and nieces, he tells them stories, he is telling me, and he draws pictures and the meaning of these pictures. And he tells them orally, and he draws pictures of them on the sand or whatever, on the paper or whatever. And then he destroys all those pictures after a while. After he tells his nieces and nephews, and that because he says it's all oral, and he wanted to have his nieces and nephews learn all this stuff orally through storytelling. So a lot of knowledge, Anishinaabe knowledge, and I know in some communities that in the wintertime they gather around the people that live in the communities. They gather around and tell stories. Stories that go way, way, way back, like, right from the beginning of, right, the creation story, which I have said that it takes 7 days to recite if you recite it in the language. And I've met some elders, medicine people that know all this kind of stuff. And they have all this stories and knowledge in their ceremonies. And so there is a vast amount of knowledge and stories that are out there. And sometimes when you go to college or universities and take the language programs or cultural programs, you'll get introduced to a lot of stories. Okay, so I'll tell you just one story that happened to me. And I came down here, London, Ontario, to teach, my wife and I. And it was, the first year I was down here, I was teaching at the London School Board. But I didn't really see that much Anishinaabe around here. So every time I went to the malls or something like that, I would always look for Anishinaabe. And then there was the first year I was here, I decided to contact the Western University and tell them that I told them that I would like to teach the Ojibwe language. And then it was going to be an adult program. So it wasn't in their mainstream. So it was the adult education program. I taught the Ojibwe language. And the first night I was there, the students were filing in into the classroom. And then there was a commotion just outside the door. Somebody was trying to explain something to somebody. And then this guy walks in. And he has a cowboy hat on, leather cowboy hat. And he goes and sits down. Uh, then I start with the lesson. I think it was, from 7 to 8:30 lesson I had. And then after that first lesson, after that first night, everybody is leaving the classroom except for this one guy, the guy with the cowboy hat. And he comes over to me and says, I just found out that you're going to teach this course at lunchtime. He says, I was on my tractor. He says, and St. Mary's is just a small town outside of London. And he says, I knew that I had to come and take this class, he was telling me. And I guess he's a farmer. And he says, I came here and I had a hard time getting into the classroom. He says, so, because I had to pay, or had to register or something. But after that, every night, or after each class, I think that first night I spent an hour and a half with him just talking. And then we would talk after each class after that. Interesting guy. He had a master's of education, and he had his master's of, I guess, agriculture. And he knew everything about Anishinaabe culture. He had these dreams, he had these visions. And he was telling me of a time that there were 4 people that were going to go up to Armstrong, which is just north of Nipigon, north of Thunder Bay. And he said that they invited him to come on a hunting trip in the fall, because one of the guys that was supposed to go didn't go. Then he said that he decided to go. So they went up there, and they found their place where they were going to start hunting for moose. And then around the campfire at night, that first night, he tells his group, he says, I've been here before. He says, I know exactly what this place is. He says, it says in the morning, he says, when we go, he says, we'll go down here, and there's a little spruce grove swamp. He says, and then we'll go a little ways on the other side, and then we're going to find a little creek and a river. And the guys he was with looked at him, and they said, none of us has ever been up in northern Ontario. So, what are you talking about? So he did that. And the next morning, sure thing, they went and explored, and everything was there, what he had told them. And then another time he told me about, he had a dream one night. It was in the fall. And this huge deer, a huge buck came and in his dream. And that, so next couple of days he went out hunting. He was up in his tree deer stand. And sure enough, he says that same deer came out of the woods. So, and he told me every time that he and his wife and kids, every time they went for holidays, he says he would always take them up north to the pictographs and I think Peterborough, and the pictographs in Lake Superior. And that's where they would always go, because he had a calling, I guess, of all of this. And then Yeah, he told me a lot of other stuff about the stuff, and this is exactly what Anishinaabe people have. They have that type of knowledge of dreams and visions. So he was kind of a strange guy. And and then another time, this is just what happened in Florida. The last couple of days, they had snow there, and they had a huge amount of snowfall, and roads were full of ice. And in the news, they had this guy skating along the roads in Florida with a hockey stick. So he was stick handling down the roads in Florida. The beaches were covered with snow. It was amazing. And that got me thinking of this one story that this elder told me from the Oneida Nation. The Oneidas are part of the Six Nations. And so this one elder told me, he says, one of the prophecies that they have is that at one time that Florida is going to be there's going to be winter there, and that we will have the weather that Florida has. Okay, it's going to be all nice and toasty up here. Well, Florida and those southern states are going to be covered in snow. And that happens in Texas, Louisiana, New Orleans, and parts of Florida. And it's interesting to have these prophecies from other First Nations and Anishinaabe prophecies that we have. Amazing stories. And one of my cousins from up north had just reminded me that our Chomish, our grandfather, before he passed on to the spirit world, he had told some of us that he had a dream and a vision that the north, where we're from, Treaty 9, Northern Ontario, that is going to be covered in desert. It's all going to be like a desert, and that in his vision, in his dreams, he said that he saw people growing oranges. So, and we believe in that. Those types of dreams and visions and prophecies. And so, so I told my cousin, that says we have to start honing our farming skills and start, investing in camels. And that's how the world is going to change in the future, especially this weather pattern, climate change, or whatever, and the realignment of the magnetic field around the Earth. And so there is going to be some changes coming around. And so there was one more thing I was going to talk about, but we have all of these stories, and one of them, this person who was followed the Medewan Society, told me, and she's a healer, she's a teacher, and she had said one time when there was a prophecy that the eagle is going to land on the moon, and that were the first words when I think George Armstrong landed on the moon in 1967. Is the eagle has landed, and the story goes that when the moon when they're going up to the moon, there are all these stories, newspapers, and they're trying to get all the different angles stories of the moon landing, and these reporters, northern Minnesota, I think, Wisconsin, they went to these elders at that time because they wanted to get the point of view of the elders, going from primitive tribe to seeing a man on the moon, land on the moon. So there was that. So they had a meeting with these elders, the men and women that in this one community, and so they're listening to the reporters, about how excited they are and what did the Anishinaabe people think about, about this whole thing. And one of the elders, after they finished, one of the elders said, well, yeah, they didn't need to do that. He says, they should have just come and talked to us. He says, and we would have told them what was up there. And the reason why they said that was that one of the powers that we have as Anishinaabe people, especially, the Akuenze, the people that, that know everything about the earth, and the knowledge people, the elders, that we have the ability, spirits have the ability to travel up to the moon and other places. So there is that part of our makeup, I guess, that we are able to do that as Anishinaabe. And but these are the Anishinaabe that really know about things like that, astral travel. And we have reading books with about Buddha and the teachings in that spiritual teachings that they have. We basically have the same thing because they believe in the astral travel also. So there's that. Okay. So that's basically the kind of stuff that Anishinaabe talk about in their communities during this time. And one of the most interesting things about our teachings or knowledge is the spiritual world. I guess we're in tuned, I guess, with with the spirits. And we also must remember that when we talk about this, that there are good spirits and bad spirits. So we really have to watch ourselves when we go down this road. And because there are people out there that will say, "Oh yeah, I'm a medicine man, and I could have visions, I have this, and that, and stuff like that," and people will believe them and follow them. And the thing that they do is they ask money, to do these ceremonies and stuff like that. And that is one of the things that a true medicine person, they don't ask for money when they do healing and when they do special ceremonies. But our stories come from there's the creation story, and one of the reasons why it takes 7 days in Ojibwe to speak about the creation story, and people that still know all the stuff about the creation story, why it takes 7 days, is because they talk about everything that happened since creation, and what happened to the story of the flood, Nanabush and Wisikachak, and all that. And so that would be part of the creation story. And one of the things that we have is all these spirits and the name of spirits in Ojibwe. And all of them are all called out or explained in the explaining of the creation story. And you have spirits of the universe, spirits of the land, the air, the water spirits, and that's why us Ojibwe are very spiritual people, and why we do these ceremonies, and that there is we have ceremonies for what do they call that now? Spirit of the dead, I guess, and the spirits of people that have passed on to the spirit world. And there are very, different ways of doing these ceremonies. Communities still do them here in Canada and the States and South America. The indigenous tribes, anyway. And one of the things I want to talk about was the little people. Here, I think Jamie's going to write down. Okay, we got some new people here. Okay, bonjour. Maymayngohaynssug. Maymayngohaynssug. That's how you say it. Maymayngohaynssug. Maymayngo is butterfly. Maymayngo is a butterfly. Ans is means small, little. Sug, and the sug is the plural form of Maymayngohaynssug. Now, these Maymayngohaynssug, the butterfly little people, I've heard stories about them, and I saw one as a little kid growing up north my dad's mom and dad's traditional territory up north, and it was in the springtime. I must have been about 4 or 5 years old, and our dad had just built this log house. It was just a 1-bedroom house and a storage area. And I was just playing around outside on this little deck that he had built. And our mom was sewing in the inside by the bed. And so I was just looking around. And then I looked underneath the house. And then underneath the house, there was this little guy sitting in one of the logs, I guess the foundation logs. He was sitting there cross-legged. So, and I remember thinking, to myself, says, Anishinnaabaymohwin says, this is a little Anishinaabe guy. And so I'm thinking, I'm going to tell mom. I told myself. But then I said, but what happens if I take my eyes off this guy? He's going to disappear. He's going to run away. So I decided, okay, I will tell mom. So I got up, ran to the front of the door. Says, Mama, I'm big. I've been. He says, Mom, come and look, come and look. So I went back and looked under the house again, and there's no, the little guy had left. But there are all different types of stories about the little people. And there are stories about when people go out into the bush, into the wilderness, that the little people are always around. They're always watching you. And you said a little gift. You put a little gift on the ground for them, or tobacco or whatever, and then they'll watch over you. But if you don't do that, they play little tricks on you and things like that. So there was there are all sorts of stories about that, where you forget things, or you forget where you put your axe or your knife or something, something like that. And then I got to know some people down here, Chippewa First Nations. I was teaching there, teaching the language and culture. And so I got to know some of the people there. And there was this one guy. He worked for he was a police officer. And he was saying that, he says that he and his wife were invited to go to a wedding one summer. And it was at Kettle Point. And Kettle Point is outside of London on Lake Huron. Yeah. And they said they went there. It was it was in the summertime. And they went into the house and they had their summer jackets on. And the lady in the house had a bedroom there, and she was putting all the jackets, sweaters, or whatever people were wearing in this one bedroom. And there was this one non-native lady went into that room to get something. And of course, everybody heard her scream when she was in the bedroom. This guy went in first and looked, see what she was screaming about, and he said he saw this little Anishinaabe guy dressed in clothes that were worn back in the fur trading days with the Hudson's Bay Company. Those fur traders with the sash and the pants, the moccasins, and the shirts that were worn at that time. And this little Anishinaabe guy, I guess, was standing by the windowsill. And then after that, the little guy just jumped out and took off somewhere. So there are stories like that. Maymayngohaynssug, it's like that little butterfly people. And then the other ones is Asinneeaynssug. Asinneeaynssug. Asin, that word asin means rock, a stone. Sug, ants is the little, sug is the plural form, the little rock people. And they live in rocks. And there are stories, Anishinaabe stories that are written in different stories where they've seen people, paddle in their canoes. They've seen little people paddle in these canoes, and then they come to a point, a huge point, rock point, and they say they see them go right through the rocks. They just disappear right into the rocks. And that, and then people have said that they run to see the other side of they go across the point by land to see if they could still, if they went through that rock and was paddling to see if they're paddling on the other side. And sure enough, after a while they come through the rocks and these little guys paddling down the wherever they were going. And that Anishinaabe a long time ago, we used to set nets all over the place. A sub, we call them a sub, a sabikani. A sub is actually comes from asabike cheese, and asabike cheese is the spider, and that's where we learned how to make nets. Is watching the spiders, how they made their nets and catch stuff. So that's where the asabike cheese is a little being that makes nets. That's what asabike cheese means for a spider. And that Anishinaabe sometimes would go and check their nets, and there'd be nothing there, even though there's lots of fish on the lake. And then they say, "Oh, the little people took our fish." And of course, Anishinaabe would lay tobacco down before they ever went on the lakes and rivers, so the little people could look after them. And so there is that. There's those little stories, okay? Asinneeaynssug, little rock people. And then the other one is about pointing. All us little Anishinaabe, when we were growing up, our parents told us never to point with our fingers. And up north growing up, they said, that was one of the protocols, I guess, growing up. Kaygohanohkahkayn, they would say. Kaygohanohkahkayn. Don't point. Kaygohanohkahkayn. Kaygohanohkahkayn. The reason for that is not the point, was that if you point and it says you never know that that there may be a spirit that you're pointing to, and then the spirit would get annoyed of you pointing to them. So that's why it says Kaygohanohkahkayn. Yeah, that's what they would tell us before we left the tent or the house wherever we were staying. So that's why we now use our lips when we point, like right. So that's why Ojibways now point with their lips, because they keep their hands still. And then somebody would say, Anishinnaabaymohwin. She says, "Where did the little fox go?" And then the guy would, "Oh, wait," and he would point with his lips. And you know exactly where little fox went when you point. Kaygohanohkahkayn. Don't point. Okay, next one. Oh, this one here. Kaygohmeekihndihssihkayn. Okay. Kaygo is don't. Meekindihs. Okay. Meekindihs is when you're teasing somebody, and also that includes animals. You're not supposed to mistreat animals, fish, or whatever. And you gotta show respect for all living things. Kaygohmeekihndihssihkayn. Don't tease. And these are the the things that our moms and dads would tell us before as kids would run out the tent or cabins or wherever. And Kaygohmeekihndihssihkayn. And don't tease. And one of the stories I have with this is that well, one of our uncles was a really, really great hunter and provider for his family. One time he went hunting, trapping, and he did something on top of a beaver house that disrespected the beaver. He went to the bathroom in the beaver house. And then after that, he couldn't catch any beaver. And then he, all his traps, all his snares, the beaver, went untouched for a long time. And then, of course, he got really, really worried. I was thinking, okay, what did I do? What happened? And so he went to see Chumash. He went to see our grandfather, his dad. And then, so Chumash heard, what he did on the beaver house. So he says, that is the cause of your problem. Your problem. And so you have to make amends to the beavers. So you had to do some ceremonies to get the good graces back from the beaver. And after that, he started to be successful again in his hunting of beavers. So there was that, and yeah, and I've heard stories of young guys, teenagers, you know, and I don't really blame this guy that happened to him. And remember that when we came back from residential school, like most of us quit high school in grade 10, and we went back into our communities, going back to the communities as a young kid, right after experiences of residential school. And yeah, they call them concentration camps, actually. And these young guys would go up back to their communities, acting really tough and knowing that they know everything and all that stuff. Acting tough. And I remember this one guy, that young guy, medicine man came to the community, and this young guy stood up and says, "I don't believe in all this stuff, all your powers, your healing things and all that stuff." He says, "I don't believe in that." And he says, I don't, I don't care, what you say or what you do. He says it's, stuff like that doesn't happen. So after a couple of days, this young guy had to go way up north along the river to visit his family, friends that lived in this other community. And he had to go up this, up through these portages and all these falls and rapids that he had to go through. And one time, he had just finished portaging this huge rapids, and he was putting his stuff. He says he was putting all his stuff in his canoe, and he put his motor on, stuff like that, and he was just pushing off to go upriver, and then he heard something in the bushes, twigs cracking, and then he looks up, and there's this huge hairy beast animal or whatever standing up, coming towards him. And he got so scared, he was pulling the motor to get it started. It took a while, but he finally got his motor going, and then took off up the river. And then all of a sudden, you could see that thing running along the shore where he was going. So got really scared. And then there was along the river, there was this huge point that he had to pass. And it was a narrow passage to the other side of the river. And that's where he saw this huge thing there waiting for him to come through. And as he got closer, he said that he took his rifle, that 30-30 rifle, and starts shooting at this thing. And he says one of the shots he remembers, it hit this thing on the knee, and fell down. And so he was able to go through. And he went to that next community. It took him about a day to get to the next one. And when he got to that community, his people knew that he had arrived, and his relatives knew that there was something wrong with him because he just wasn't there. He just, I guess, lost everything. Just wasn't his normal self, I guess. And the people there got a medicine man from the village, from the community, to come down. And they said this young guy was, hugged by the medicine man, and the young guy just collapsed. And I think a story goes that I think he slept for 2 days straight. And then after that, he learned not to tease anybody, especially elders. And so that was the stories that we have as Anishinaabe people, especially not just us Ojibways, but all the other different tribes. We have all of these stories that we have, but it's stories of spirits, the spiritual world, death, what happens after we die, and that we have a purpose in that we have in our life, and that most people don't even realize what their purpose in life is. But there are some that are told by elders what their purpose is, and that's where they have their Anishinaabe names come from, through ceremonies by elders, and these Anishinaabe names are. Let me see. When we were young, when we were born, there was an animal that showed up. It could be a bird, it could be a butterfly, an insect, on the moment that you're born, and that's your spirit animal. And they said that this is the animal that will that helped you travel from the spirit world to the physical world, and they show up when you're born to see if you made your journey. And mine was the loon man. When I was born, way up north, they came onto the lake and showed themselves to parents, aunts and uncles. And that after they heard me crying, they left. So that's my spirit bird. And all my cousins, my brothers, sisters, we all have those spirit birds. and spirit helpers. So we have, and that's why we have this special relationship with the natural world, is because of, because we all came from the spiritual world, the animals, and they are helpers, and they are healers, and they have a special relationship with us. And that's where the Anishinaabe, the Ojibwe, that's where our responsibilities come from our clans. Nitoram, my clan. And Ote, it has the word Ote in there. And Nitoram Ote is there. Otetam. And that's where you have your connection to your clan, the society that you belong to, that clan. My clan is the Atik, the Caribou. So I'm related to all the animals with the hoof, the deer, buffalo, bashika, So, and our responsibilities is looking after our communities. We're responsible for communities, health, education, and things that will help with our communities. And we are teachers, knowledge keepers, the Atik, the Caribou clan. So that's where my responsibility lies, is teaching. And that's one of the reasons why we started this Zoom thing with the language, is in some parts we have, I teach some language, and then also a little bit of history, and a little bit of cultural teachings. So that's why tonight we had these stories of Anishinaabe stories that are around, and that, as I said before, they have communities that have these traditional storytelling of what happened in the history of the Anishinaabe, and who did what in the history. The leaders, and all of what happened before, and these I was telling you about the prophecies, of what's going to happen in the future. That people in these communities have these visions and dreams, and that they tell it to their families, and that it's kind of strange sometimes when I hear some of the stories that people tell. And one other story is our mom used to tell us, one of our cousins had died, and this was when I think it was like before we were born or something, and that one of our cousins had died a long time ago. and they're preparing his body and stuff like that. This is like way in the bush. It was in and that this guy that died, just recently, wakes up again and tells his mom. He says, "Takobiton nimakizim it nibo niamagot epumusegach." The big Simon. He says, "Tahtihbahjihmohwin," says, "we're walking along this path." He says, "Some," he says, "there's sand all over." He says, "I see some people walking on my left and on the right." He says, "They're struggling." And then, but the path that I'm on, he says, it's all nice and easy. So this is Tahtihbahjihmohwin is really tight. I don't want to get sand in my feet. So our mom used to tell us that story. And I think the reason for that was that the people that were struggling, that were walking, were the ones, that that they did something that they weren't supposed to in their life, or something like that. And that so there is there's Anishinaabe stories about that. So with stories about going into the spirit world. And I've heard stories where people have died or were dying because they were caught in the middle of a snowstorm or something. And they're going to die, and then there are spirits that came to them and says, "You're not ready yet. You're not going to. And you're not going to die. So wake up, and you'll be all right. You'll be all right." So there are stories like that all over in the Anishinaabe community. And my dog is barking, so I think telling me to stop. Bad dreams, after this. Scary dreams, anyway. Well, I'm glad you guys showed up. Listen to some stories, and some. I hope you take this opportunity for you to tell your stories, or listen to Anishinaabe stories that the elders have. And there's a lot of Anishinaabe knowledge out there, a lot of Anishinaabe stories and knowledge in our communities, our organizations. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'd like to say miigwech for showing up and listening. Okay.